All right, well, I just want to turn your attention to the notes this morning. And we introduced this video last week. And during our biblical archaeology studies, we're going to be using quite a lot of videos from Expedition Bible and archaeologist Joel Kramer. And you have the website there. There's many videos on YouTube. And we are going to be looking at a video today that's actually about an hour long, but we're going to look at 37 minutes of it. And that is the Bible versus the Book of Mormon. Now, we're not specifically trying to pick on Mormonism or on the Book of Mormon. We're simply using this as an illustration to show you that there is evidence. The Bible claims to be truth. The Book of Mormon claims to be truth. And so there are extra biblical, and that means some evidence outside of the Bible itself to show you that the Bible is literal, that it is true, that it is accurate, that it is historical. The Bible claims to be true, and all the evidence points to the fact that it is true. Now, the Book of Mormon claims to be true, and yet when we look at the evidence through geography, through archaeology, we don't find the evidence. So we're simply comparing the Bible with the Book of Mormon to illustrate the fact that the Bible does have evidence, and there's a whole field of archaeology that backs up the story of the Scriptures. And so we're going to be, this video basically compares the two. So the Bible versus the Book of Mormon. Now you'll notice in your notes in today's lesson guide, there's little boxes at the end of each of those little statements, for example, and these will, not all of them, but most of the points on the video, that's what these points are. It starts with geography, peoples and empires, cities, flora, fauna, so on. And so we make a little statement or a question, and then there's a box. And so what I encourage you to do is to answer those questions as you look at the video. It helps us to kind of key in on the important things. For example, does the Bible have maps? Well, you open your Bible in the back, you get all kinds of maps, because it talks about places and countries and so on. And yet, I have a Book of Mormon here, and you may have one too. And in the back, there are no maps. Why are there no maps in the Book of Mormon? So I point that out to show you that that's a box that you can fill in with a tick, which means true, or an X, which means false. Okay? So I'm going to be getting my pen out and going through this as we look at the video this morning. So hopefully we'll have no technical difficulties. And we're going to turn the light off here so that we can try to see this as best as we can. And hopefully we'll be able to adjust the audio now. Okay.
We travel to upstate New York because the Hill Cumorah is there, which is central to Mormonism. It's the traditional site where the great battles described in the Book of Mormon were fought. It's owned by the Mormon Church. They have a statue of Moroni and a visitor center, and they put on a pageant during the summertime that retells the Book of Mormon story. In fact, it's the only place that the LDS Church declares to be an official ancient historical site.
Because a narrow neck of land is described in the Book of Mormon account, it's generally assumed that the setting for the Book of Mormon is Mesoamerica. In fact, earlier versions of the Book of Mormon contained pictures of Mayan ruins, implying that there was a connection between these ruins and the Book of Mormon civilizations. And in the same way, artwork that's commonly used to depict these Book of Mormon scenes frequently portrays Mayan architecture and Mayan themes. So we traveled to Guatemala and to Honduras and southern Mexico with LDS anthropologist Dr. Tom Murphy to address the question of whether or not the Book of Mormon account matches the geography and the archaeology of the New World.
In Israel, we started with the most obvious thing. So one of our first questions was, does the geography match the biblical account?
We are using the same names used in the Bible 3,500 years ago till today, like the Dead Sea, like the Moabian mountains, the Ammonite mountains, and we preserve them till today.
These places were what the Bible says that they were. The geography matches. The valleys are next to the cities, which are connected to the hills, and all of this can be traced in very detailed geographic accounts in Scripture.
So you find maps in the Bible, why don't you find maps in the Book of Mormon?
There's no map showing the Book of Mormon lands because they can't place it on Earth. They don't know where it is.
What about all these illustrated maps you see for the Book of Mormon lands? I mean, why don't they agree with one another? And I guess more important than that, why don't they correspond to any real landmass on Earth?
You can't have a geography because there is no real world setting for the events described in the Book of Mormon. We can't agree upon it because anytime we attempt to try to put it in a real world setting, we have to distort either that real world setting or the text itself. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints takes no official position on the geography of the Book of Mormon. One of the reasons for this is obvious, is that the events never took place anywhere.
The Jews still exist today, both in the countries to which they were exiled and in the land of Israel. All of the civilizations surrounding Palestine have also been well established through archaeology and history.
Israel is a bridge of 3 continents. So we had the Egyptian coming here, the Assyrian coming here, the Babylonian coming here, the Hellenist Empire, the Roman.
It's very evident when you read the Bible that they're really talking about historical places.
How do you know that the Roman Empire existed?
The Romans left marks everywhere they went. They left large roads, they left coins, and they left written records.
The remains of the ancient Greek and Roman empires, which are written about in the Bible, are clearly visible throughout the Old World. Likewise, the Book of Mormon also records the existence of empires in the New World.
We get the Jaredite civilization in the Book of Ether, a promise that they will become the greatest nation in the world. This greatest nation on earth, we find no traces of it.
The dates found in the footnotes of the Book of Mormon indicate that the Jaredite Empire was replaced by the Nephite Empire shortly after 600 BC.
In the Book of Mormon, you've got this large civilization of Nephites who were industrious people who built machines, lived in large cities.
I don't know of any evidence that the Nephites ever existed in the Americas.
The civilizations we find throughout Central America tended to peak, find their great climax between 600 and 900 AD, well after the events described in the Book of Mormon.
The Lamanites are said to have annihilated the Nephite Empire around 400 AD. So of the 3 people groups mentioned in the Book of Mormon, the Lamanites are the only ones that survived, becoming, according to the Book of Mormon, the principal ancestors of Native Americans.
Now here at the Hill Cumorah, we have this plaque that specifically lists us as Lamanites. It's written to the Lamanites, who are a remnant of the house of Israel. That's listing us as being specifically written to in the Book of Mormon.
No se ha encontrado ninguna evidencia de una cultura procedente del territorio de Israel, llamada Lamanitas o Nifitas. No hay ninguna evidencia.
The Bible also contains accounts of people groups that no longer exist today, such as the Canaanites and the Philistines. But are these people groups missing from the archaeological record?
We know a lot about the Canaanite civilization through Egyptian sources, as well as through many archaeological sites excavated in this country where we have the Canaanite civilization reflected.
Archaeologically, have the Philistines been shown to have existed?
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely. The Philistines have their own distinct material culture, which we can tell apart from other cultures that lived here.
This begs the question, could the 3 enormous empires that are said to have flourished in the Americas for centuries leave no archaeological trace of themselves?
So would it be possible, say, in the Americas, for an empire to exist there and leave no archaeology?
No, it's impossible. No, it's impossible. We say that archaeology never lie. If there were people at a certain place, they left behind them many artifacts.
We do not have such a situation in which a certain power would be destroyed without leaving any evidence. They leave their tombs, they leave the remnants of their houses, they leave their temples, they leave the foundations, and they leave the destruction.
The permanent settlements, all of them, are well known and agreed upon by scholars in Israel today. Places like Hatzor and Megiddo and Jerusalem and Shiloh and Arad and Beersheba and Jericho. Many of these are still inhabited until today, and they may be ruins. Jesus condemned these sites of Capernaum and Bethsaida and Chorazin, but there's no doubt scholars know that these were real places that existed in his time, and the evidence for them is certain.
All these places that are still called by the same name, how is that possible?
Because for thousands of years there's been a continuous settlement. The local peoples have passed on the names from generation to generation.
Jerusalem, Bethlehem, Eilat, those are biblical names. We keep them for more than 3,000 years.
The fortified cities written about in the Book of Mormon have names such as Nephi, Manti, Zarahemla, Sidon, Jershon, and Bountiful, to name just a few of the more than 30 major cities mentioned in the Book of Mormon.
Because of the development of the epigraphy, we now are able to read, the ancient names of most of the sites.
You ever heard of names in like Zarahemla?
No.
Or Nephi?
A good friend once asked me, what sort of evidence would it take to convince you that the Book of Mormon was an ancient document? And my response to him was, it'd be nice if we could even find cities that are similar to the ones described in the Book of Mormon.
There is no evidence as far as where Zarahemla is, which is one of the big cities that's mentioned in the Book of Mormon.
Here we are standing in Palenque today. The buildings that we see in front of us were in fact constructed several centuries after the events described in the Book of Mormon. So this could not possibly have been a Nephite city.
If a city existed like this, a big city, is it possible that there would be no archaeological evidence left at all?
No, it's impossible. In a city like Tiberias, there is plenty of evidence, like architecture, floors, small finds, objects, coins, you name it, everything.
Could a major city be conquered and not leave any of that evidence?
No way. By no means.
Years ago, I was engaged in a conversation with a Christian friend. One of the things he told me is that if I wanted to go to Jerusalem, it was easy to do still today. I could visit Bethlehem, and I could see the places where the events described in the New Testament took place. But have I ever been or heard of anyone going to Zarahemla, or to Bountiful, or to the city of Nephi? I wasn't even sure those places ever existed. And what I found in my anthropology classes is that my Christian friend was right, and the Book of Mormon was wrong.
The biblical world as reflected in the scriptures is matched by the plants and the trees we know these.
Figs, almonds, palm trees, wheat, barley.
When I read the New Testament, I see the relationship between Jesus and his world as one that represents accurately the types of animals that we find in the ancient Near East.
The animals that are mentioned in the Bible still do exist today. It's true that some are no longer existing here, such as lions, but we have explorers centuries ago that speak of these. There's no doubt, even if they don't exist today, that they did exist in antiquity.
The Book of Mormon describes how Lehi's sons explore the land after their arrival in the Americas. 1 Nephi 18 says, "There were beasts in the forest of every kind, both the cow and the ox and the ass and the horse and the goat." 2 Nephi 12:7 says, "The land is also full of horses." And the Book of Mormon describes the use of horse-drawn chariots during massive battles involving tens of thousands of warriors. The Book of Mormon also records other aspects of the culture, including its agriculture. In Mosiah chapter 9 it says, "They began to till the ground with seeds of wheat and barley."
We would expect to find remnants of the types of plants and animals that they raised. Instead, what we find are turkeys and llamas and dogs. We find corn and beans and squash.
What we see in the Book of Mormon are all the wrong plants, things like wheat and barley in ancient America. We don't see wheat here. We don't see cattle, sheep, goats. No horses during Book of Mormon times. No elephants during Book of Mormon times. Completely absent.
The Mayas didn't have beasts of burden. They didn't have horses, for example.
The first time we saw a horse, as far as we know, was when a white man rode a horse from Albany up here in 1677.
So the stories of riding horses into battle could not have occurred in the Americas.
Both the Nephites and Jaredites are said to have processed ores and worked with many kinds of metal. 1 Nephi 18:25 says that Lehi's family did find all manner of ore, both gold and silver, and of copper.
We don't find the use of metals like gold, copper in metallurgic terms, like you see described in the Book of Mormon with references to bellows and other tools of metallurgy. The Book of Mormon specifically stated that there was steel in the New World. It's very easy to find the places where the steel is smelted. Even if you don't find the steel objects, not a single site has been found that can be said, yes, steel was smelted here.
And what is really surprising about the Maya is the fact that they didn't use metal.
It is the lack of specific types of metal in the Americas that poses a serious problem for the Book of Mormon account, which claims that both the Jaredites and Nephites use metal armor and weapons in their warfare, metal coins for their currency, and are even described as using metal plates to write on. The heading under chapter 19 in 1 Nephi states that Nephi makes plates of ore and records the history of his people. Helaman 3:15 describes the Nephite writings saying, "There are many books and many records of every kind, and they have been kept chiefly by the Nephites."
One of the things that is said about the Nephites is that they were a culture with writing. Now, a culture with writing leaves records. And if that number of people did not leave a record, well, I don't think they existed.
And other records and accountings say that there were just, hundreds or thousands of plates and records of the people.
The idea that there could have been an empire that lasted for 1,000 years, that claimed to be literate, and for there to be no historical trace at all is extremely far-fetched.
Any indication that the ancient Americans between 600 BC and 400 AD wrote on metal plates?
No, no.
Ancient writings have been found from all of the empires that surrounded the kingdom of Israel, but none so abundant as the biblical manuscripts that have been found coming from the Israelites themselves.
The earliest known part of the Bible to have been preserved in archaeology is a short passage from Numbers chapter 6 verses 24 to 26 that was discovered by Gabriel Barkai.
In an excavation which I directed here in Jerusalem, we found two small tiny silver plaques. They carry in the ancient Hebrew script the oldest biblical verses that we own. They come from this very period, the 7th century BC.
Well, here we've climbed up the mountain in Qumran, and this is cave number 1. This is where the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered in 1947.
Every single book of the Old Testament, apart from possibly the book of Esther, is found in the Dead Sea Scrolls.
And so now we have copies of the Old Testament books from the Dead Sea Scrolls from 200 to 100 BC.
For the Greek New Testament, we have around 5,500 manuscripts that's containing part or all of the Greek New Testament.
So we've got plenty of evidence for the Greek Gospels, for the Greek letters in the New Testament that go way, way back to very early on, to only a matter of a few decades after they were first written.
By contrast, we have no ancient copy of the Book of Mormon.
We have manuscript evidence that's almost 2,000 years old for the New Testament and over 2,000 years old for the Old Testament. For the Book of Mormon, I'm not aware of any manuscript evidence at all.
But with the Book of Mormon, we have no documentary trail. We do not have texts that we can go to until 1830. Between the events in the Book of Mormon, which supposedly ended in 400 AD, and the first documentary trace is 1,400 years before we find any sort of documentary trace. What this suggests to me is that the book itself was constructed in the 19th century. Where are the documents? Where's the history that we find ample, abundant when we're dealing with the Bible? Why don't we find it with the Book of Mormon too?
If you had the textual support of ancient documents for the Book of Mormon that say the Bible has, would you have lost faith in the Book of Mormon?
That's a good question. I mean, quién sabe? Who knows? It would certainly help the situation if the Book of Mormon had a documentary trail and artifacts that would support its claims. It would certainly, we might be able to refer to it then as a historical document.
The Book of Mormon states in Mormon 9:32 that the language used in ancient America by the Nephites was called Reformed Egyptian.
And that's what it says in the Book of Mormon, that they wrote in Reformed Egyptian.
Would a Hebrew around about 600 BC know how to write in the ancient Reformed Egyptian?
What's ancient Reformed Egyptian? Linguists and others will state that they've never heard of Reformed Egyptian, unless they're Mormon. And the reason why the mainstream linguists don't have anything to say about it is because it's a fictional language. It does not exist.
Any indication that the ancient inhabitants of the New World wrote in Hebrew or Egyptian?
Categorically no.
No hay ninguna evidencia, no hay ningún rasgo hebreo, no existe en el dato iconográfico del glifo, no existe ni por la mínima, ni la remota idea de una escritura hebrea.
The claim that the Book of Mormon is Hebrew scripture from this community that migrated, written on metal plates and saying lots of different things, is just impossible at the end of the day.
Why don't we just put the gold plates out there for everybody to look at and observe and read for themselves? We could put them in a monument over here. We could have the visitor center. We could put the gold plates there. And anybody who had any doubts could come and read the Egyptian hieroglyphics there for themselves. If the Book of Mormon were true, that's exactly what we'd be able to do. We can take and find old texts from the ancient Near East, take the Dead Sea Scrolls. And in fact, you can go to museums and see the Dead Sea Scrolls laid out for everyone to see. If the Book of Mormon was really what it claimed to be, we could do the same.
Both the Bible and the Book of Mormon describe a coinage system. The Bible, for example, mentions many Roman coins being used in the days of Jesus in the 1st century A.D.
The pavement upon which we stand at this moment, upon it there was a layer of about 2 to 3 inches of soil, which included many coins dating back to the 1st century.
How many coins would you say have been found at the site during all of its excavation?
Maybe 300, 400.
So what are you putting in the bucket there?
Coins.
Coins, huh?
More than 10 coins.
Oh, really?
In one day.
One day, 10 coins. So those are just the ones that you found yesterday?
Yeah. Chapter 11 of the Book of Alma in the Book of Mormon. The chapter heading says, Nephite coinage set forth. Then it goes through and describes how the money system of the Book of Mormon worked. Now, if we take these images of coins we find in the Book of Mormon and contrast them to the systems of exchange in place in ancient America, we find that they're not at all alike. There were no metallic coins being used. The Book of Mormon just flat has it wrong.
In all your excavating, you haven't found any coins that would predate the coming of the Europeans?
Nothing.
In fact, metallic coins were not in use in any part of ancient America.
We didn't use coins. We didn't have them. We took coins when they first came, which were not until Europeans came around, and we usually kind of flattened them out and made them into jewelry.
Yeah, that's what we did too. Yeah.
So the question that arises is, where are all the Nephite coins that were in use for almost 1,000 years?
I don't think that there might be a situation when all the coins of a certain civilization or a certain authority would disappear without leaving a mark.
The Bible gives an account of numerous battles and wars throughout the history of the Israelites.
Like, do they find things like spearheads and things like that?
When this country, for example, passed the Assyrian conquest, we have the arrowheads which landed upon the roofs of the buildings before they got destroyed. So we have first the layer of the arrowheads, and then we have the layer of the floors.
Before the biblical period, we have evidence of arrowheads that were used by the Babylonians, and we have arrowheads that were used by the locals, and we have arrowheads that were used by the Assyrians.
The footnotes in the Book of Mormon suggest that the Lamanite extermination of the Nephites took place around 400 AD. Yet, it left no archaeological evidence. By contrast, a much smaller battle that happened centuries earlier in the 1st century AD in Palestine demonstrates what one can expect to find if a battle like the one described in the Book of Mormon had really occurred.
We have Flavius Josephus telling us about a rock, an isolated rock in the desert named Masada. He mentions about 900 people being up there, besieged by the Romans and committing suicide. The place was identified, it was excavated in the 1960s, and we have the skeletal remains, we have the houses, we have the coins, so we have a very clear evidence for the very tragic events which took place at Masada through archaeology. No civilization can be wiped out in such a way that no remnant of it is left.
The Book of Ether and the Book of Mormon, especially chapter 15, describes a massive war in which it reports there had been slain 2 millions of mighty men, also their wives and children. Where are these steel swords that led to the massacres of millions? Where are the bodies, the remains, the skeletons of these millions of people? Where's the evidence of this ancient catastrophe? We don't find it. We don't find it in Central America. We don't find it near Hill Cumorah in New York. It simply didn't happen.
Centuries later, the Lamanite nation is said to have destroyed the Nephite nation in another massive battle at the same hill, Cumorah.
Well, growing up Mormon, I was always taught that the hill Cumorah was the location of the culminating events of the Book of Mormon.
Mormon chapter 8, verse 2. And now it came to pass that after the great and tremendous battle at Cumorah, behold, the Nephites who had escaped into the country southward were hunted by the Lamanites until they were all destroyed. It goes on to make an accounting of how many people approximately were killed, and it mentions them in tens of thousands each time. When you add it all up, it's at least 230,000 people.
We thought it was a bad thing when we would lose 12 people. You know, then it was like, because you had 12 families in deep mourning.
I grew up in Western New York, and the study that I chose was anthropology and archaeology because of my interest in trying to help prove that the Book of Mormon was correct. We were told at that time that science would prove the church was true. I did do archaeological work in the Palmyra area. If there were big battles in the masses that they talked about, we would have expected to find things that would be indicative to those big battles. Mass burial sites, human remains, a bone. You know, bone lasts very well. There have been no steel swords found, no chariot parts.
When we talk about warfare weapons, we are basically talking about stone tools.
Habían armas cortopunzantes, pero de obsidiana y de pedernal, pero nada armas de metales de ninguna naturaleza.
Whenever they find in Israel a biblical site, they always excavate it. So why doesn't the LDS Church excavate the hill Cumorah?
It would be a grand embarrassment to do that and not find a single thing.
And do you think that's what they would find?
I'm confident that they would find nothing.
Have you ever done any archaeological excavations on the hill Cumorah?
They have.
What, have they found anything?
No. The LDS Church, of course, owning much of this property, could do the investigations. But they know from the little bit they have done, and they know from what's been done by others, the evidence isn't there. So it's obvious why they don't excavate. Because if they did, all it would do is disprove their faith claims.
We are here next to the western wall of the Temple Mount, or the Wailing Wall, as it is sometimes called. The wall itself is approximately 2,020 years old. This wall was built by Herod the Great, and it was destroyed by Titus in 70 of the Common Era, when the Second Temple went on fire and got destroyed. This was one of the greatest tragedies of Jerusalem, which is, I think, embodied in this pile of stones that you can see here. This is no doubt a very good representation of the words of the gospel about Jesus saying that you see these magnificent stones of the Temple Mount, there will be none of them one on top of the other. This pile is an illustration which cannot be better for the words of Jesus.
In 2 Nephi 5:16, the Book of Mormon says that Nephi and his family built a temple, just like Solomon's temple, after they arrived in the Americas.
It says, and I, Nephi, another son of Lehi, did build a temple, and I did construct it after the manner of the temple of Solomon. So let's say that that's true, that in ancient times they built this temple
in America.
In America.
Any person who studies the Bible understands the centrality of worship here in Jerusalem on the Temple Mount. The very idea of a temple anywhere other than Mount Moriah is a total impossibility. Jews are literally not allowed to erect a temple anywhere in the world except for right here.
The Book of Mormon clearly identifies Lehi as a descendant of Joseph. Later, in 2 Nephi 5, Lehi appoints his 2 sons as priests to serve in the temple they had built.
The men who are serving in the Holy Temple are all descendants of Aaron, lineal descendants of Aaron.
The Book of Mormon claim poses a problem because appointing priests who were not Aaronic Levites was expressly forbidden in the Old Testament. And yet, the Book of Mormon claims to uphold the Old Testament laws. What evidence is there of the existence of the people described in the Bible?
We have an inscription mentioning the house of David. Actually, 2 different inscriptions. One found in southern Transjordan. The second one comes from Tel Dan in the north.
And when we look at the Old Testament canon, when we look at people like Daniel and Isaiah, especially the later prophets of Malachi and Ezra, we have lots of extra-biblical witnesses to talk about these people outside of strictly their biblical context. These are ancient historical figures.
The New Testament talks about various figures like high priests, and we see records of these high priests which are from that period, showing that they clearly existed.
Caiaphas is mentioned in the New Testament as the high priest in the time of Jesus. Several years ago, workmen came upon a burial cave. Inside the burial cave, there were approximately 10 ossuaries or bone boxes, upon one of which appeared the words, Joseph, the son of Caiaphas.
The figures like Paul have to have existed. If not, who wrote the letters that bear his name, that are written in the Greek of the time?
The introduction page in the Book of Mormon claims that, like the Bible, the book was written by many ancient prophets.
So before we can ask if these prophets were true prophets, we have to ask did they ever exist? We have no evidence that they ever existed, let alone that they wrote down these prophecies, that these prophecies were maintained accurately. We can't even ask these questions. We can't go that far.
So what of the central figure of the Bible, Jesus Christ? What evidence is there that he existed?
There's no doubt that Jesus was a historical figure. He's not only mentioned in Christian texts, but he's also mentioned in non-Christian texts. The Jews talk about Jesus Christ in their writings, even though they don't talk about him favorably.
When we look at the testimonium of Josephus, we see first, Jesus was Messiah, Jesus lived as a teacher, Jesus died under Pilate, and Jesus was resurrected. Both Tacitus and Suetonius were Romans and did not see the Christian faith as something they wanted to promote in any way, shape, or form, and yet they're mentioning Christ. These are real people talking about the historical reality of Jesus.
The historicity of Jesus Christ is established by ancient documents, and these are documents that can be proven to be ancient.
Do you believe that the person of Jesus was a historical person?
Absolutely, yeah. We do have, a lot of records. We know that he existed. I don't think that there's any doubt about that.
Jesus was here. On this very same level, on these very same stones, he was walking when he went into the Temple Mount.
Jesus was a historical person in the ancient Near East, but to proclaim that Jesus was a historical personage here in the ancient America is a rather absurd proposal that's certainly not backed by the evidence.
Is it accurate to say that Jesus visited the Americas? There's no evidence for that at all.
The Book of Mormon proposes that after Jesus arrived in the Americas in AD 34, that there was a massive conversion to Christianity.
Aquí no existe ninguna evidencia cristiana, ni primitiva, ni más evolucionada.
I find no evidence that tells me that Jesus Christ of the Bible is the Jesus Christ of the Book of Mormon. I cannot understand how archaeological evidence and textual evidence would point to the historical reality of Christ in Palestine and yet be entirely lost in the New World.
The Jesus Christ we see presented in the Book of Mormon is the Jesus Christ of Joseph Smith's imagination.
All right, well, we're going to stop the video there. Obviously, there's an awful lot of information to take in there, but to me, it's very telling that for the Bible, there's all kinds of evidence, archaeological, historical, but when it comes to the Book of Mormon, there is none. They didn't find not one pre-European coin in all of the Americas that was described in the Book of Mormon. How can that possibly be? There's many, many other reasons, but I think through that you see the importance of the study of archaeology, biblical archaeology, and understanding biblical geography. So that's what we're going to continue studying in our adult Bible class over the next several weeks and months. All right?